Oh, good morning, everyone. It really is great to see so many people here at what I think is quite a critical time for our industry. The Consortium formed officially a bit over 12 months ago, and where we've got to is we've formed the task force, but now we need to build the consortia. The idea of having a consortia is about collaborating across industry to rapidly increase the rate of genetic gain and ultimately improve productivity and profitability for our industry. So that's the challenge ahead for us. And the task force has agreed that what we need to deliver is over $400 million of improved return for industry by 2022. And we'll do that by doubling the annual rate of genetic gain and adding more value for the commercial livestock producers. I think the key question is, though, how are we going to do that? We've come up with that number based off the last evaluation of the genetics program returned $4 for every dollar invested. So I think that's going to be a pass mark, and I think we can do better than that. But how do we do that? And it's not going to be by continuing to drive genetics adoption on its own and in isolation. We really need to identify where the pain points are in the whole value chain, and we need to position genetics and how genetics adds value within the whole farm system. We'll get more value out of genetics if we can also have, we need good genetics as a starting point. We need to feed those animals well. They need to be highly productive. We need to manage their nutrition. And we also need to better meet and exceed our consumer expectations and better target our market specifications. And what that does is it improves efficiency. It means that productivity doesn't mean just producing more. It means that we're going to be more targeted in our production, and we can potentially be more profitable off our current base of production and have the most efficient animals that are delivering the best product for our consumers globally. So I think that's really the challenge. And so the priorities that the task force have come up with are split across making sure that we're investing in world-leading R&D. And you'll see some of the people around the task force are certainly considered world leaders in their field. And that's really also about making sure that when we're investing in research, we have the end goal in mind. We're focused on eating quality, we differentiate ourselves globally on eating quality, and eating quality delivers extra value for our whole value chain. And then thinking about technology. What can technology deliver us? How can that reduce cost, increase rates of gain, help us bridge those gaps in the information that we need to get flowing back from those market signals back through to our selection decisions back on farm. So things like multi-breed, things like cost-effective genomics that are really going to be game changers as we move forward. But the way in which our commercial industry and our seed stock sector values genetics, we think there's significant room for improvement. It does create a culture change. We're really going to be focusing on profit drivers and key profit drivers within businesses and demonstrating the role of genetics in achieving those rates of profit growth. We're going to generate a lot of information as we have multi-breed and genomics. We have a lot of carcass data through MSA and other technologies that are going to deliver a lot more information. We need seamless transfer of information. That's another pain point that the task force have identified. And having accessible data and seamless transfer of information to be able to assist in the decision making becomes critically important. And today, when you look around the room where we do have representatives from research, commercial, seed stock producers, from family businesses through to large corporates, processors, brand owners, we've got the supply chain represented here in the room. And what I would like to see at the end of the day is making sure that we can capture your feedback, understand your priorities, that we need to then attract investment through the Genetics Consortium to address those pain points. We also have now a genetics adoption manager in David Packer, who we'll hear from later in the day, who's really working on setting up a national network for adoption and reinvigorating the adoption of genetics throughout the whole supply chain. So when we've got a lot of investments in reference populations and high quality data that's improving accuracies of our genetic evaluation, but if we can bridge the gap between from the seed stock sector, getting high genetic merit animals going out and being heavily used and linking that value then through to the end consumer, we'll really capture that value and be able to make better selection decisions back with our genetics and make genetics a more valuable tool to help better meet consumer needs. The DNA and genomics will help us link the information back. We've already got a national livestock identification system. We've got every animal that has ever been graded in MSA is accessible through my MSA, and all of that information on every animal graded allows you to benchmark your performance. To better improve those market specification outcomes, we actually need the tools back on farm to help you do that, and genetics is going to be a very important one of those tools. And linking to consumer outcomes, consumer is the only person who puts money into our supply chain. And if we can have highly differentiated brands that are capturing additional value, those price signals flow back through to the producer. If we look at the evaluation, the genetic analysis itself and how it's evolved over time, single-step analysis is a game changer in that we can now have genomically enhanced breeding values to dramatically improve the accuracy of the EBVs, and doing all of that with pedigree and performance data in one go is really the turnaround time then, and the improvement in accuracy makes the trust in genetics a lot more valuable. Some of the other changes that you mightn't have considered that are going to have a pretty big impact on our industry are changes in our language, in how we can become more outcomes focused as an industry. The industry invested in overhauling the beef language, and those recommendations are being worked through, and one of the first recommendations that's been commercialised out of that language review is the commercialisation of a cipher, eating quality graded. And what that's allowing us to do is to be able to grade animals and predict the eating quality of those cuts and package those cuts and position them under high quality brands before any factors that are not related to eating quality are applied. So we're not limited by dentition. We can actually determine what the eating quality of those animals and those cuts were before we apply any restrictions in the language. And what that means for our industry is that we just ran a very simple model where we looked at how many 4 and 6 tooth animals are discounted currently in the marketplace, how many of those are not only MSA eligible but above the national average on index. And if we were packing those cuts at the same value as an MSA YG product, what would that mean for our industry? Using our price differentials at retail, wholesale, and at a processor level. There's an additional $46 million for our supply chain that's a lost opportunity at the moment. We're not capturing that. But there are companies now already using EQG. We've got product going into export markets under an eating quality graded cipher. They're no longer using dentition, and we'll start to see the grids change over time. That's in addition to the $130 million that went back to producers just in 16-17 alone from price differentials of MSA versus non-MSA when we just look at one category. So we're starting to see how if we better meet or exceed consumer expectations, those additional price incentives are flowing back through to the producer. The other important investment that our industry is making is around objective carcass measurement technologies. When we can take the human factor out of grading, when we can improve the precision of measurements of carcasses, we can pick up a lot of efficiencies, yes, in the processing works, but we can get better, more consistent feedback to producers. When we understand then what drives variation and what also drives better market specification compliance, we can make better decisions on farm. And if we look at where we're heading as an industry, and I'll finish here, is we really need to understand what the end game is. And by 2025, it's very realistic that cheaper genomic tests mean that DNA testing of animals becomes routine. We then are making our breeding decisions and setting our breeding objectives based on market specifications. Those objective measurements of live animals to predict market specification compliance will have better technology on farm and make sure we're understanding the best market for those animals at any point in time. We're then also getting lean meat yield measures. We're objectively measuring eating quality traits. When you overlay that with brand specifications that are based on quality, our pricing incentives start to change. And we'll hear a little bit more about that today as well. So if you can get paid on the value of your carcasses, and then our cuts and portions, we're matching every cut from every carcass graded to its best eating outcome, and then the consumer and that meal solution, consumers will then be able to purchase the product based on occasion, based on the quality, and then the brands will be able to set themselves apart on provenance, on production system, and we really start to set ourselves apart globally from our competitors. We'll be a long way ahead. So I want to challenge you today on, hopefully our speakers, I'm sure that they will challenge you on where we need to go as an industry. I would love to get your feedback on each session, and you've got notes on your table there, and we will use that. And then at the end of the day, David will be able to articulate where we go from here. Today, for me, this is a really great starting point where we've got the consortium going, we've got investment on the table, and now as an industry we can choose our future and work together to achieve those end goals. So Martin, I'll hand back to you. Hopefully that sets the scene for the day, and please enjoy, and I hope that you get a lot out of it. Thank you for coming today. Thanks, Martin.
Cheers. Thank you.